How does an ordinary household in Japan keep its driveway, its patio, and its garden paths weed-free for years without ever spraying a single chemical? The answer isn't a product on a shelf. It's a way of thinking that's been practiced in Japan for centuries, and it works just as well on a cracked driveway in Ohio or a gravel path in Spain as it does in a courtyard in Kyoto. In Japan, there's a daily practice called soji, usually translated as cleaning, but it really means tending. You see it in schools, where children sweep their own classrooms every day after lunch. You see it in temple courtyards, where the gravel gets raked every morning before sunrise. Small acts done often that keep a space in good order. Nobody in that courtyard is fighting a once-a-year battle against mess. They're simply tending, a little, every day, so the mess never gets the chance to build. Apply that one idea to weeds and the whole picture changes. You fix the surface and the habit, not just the symptom. A weed is not really your enemy. It's just a plant taking the opening you left it. Close the openings, tend a little and often, and the war you've been fighting every July mostly disappears on its own. A Japanese gardener catches the seedling when it's the size of a fingernail and pulls it the morning after rain, when the soil is soft and the whole root slides out clean. There's even a word for that attentive hand-weeding, kusamushiri. Handle the weed while it's tiny and the job takes a second. But prevention only helps going forward, and if you're watching this, you've probably already got weeds pushing up through the concrete right now. So we'll split this in two. First, how to clear what's already growing using what's in your kitchen. Then, how to set things up so new weeds simply never come back. Quick one before we dig in. Tell me in the comments what you've been using on your weeds. A spray? Salt? Pulling by hand? And is it actually working? The most accessible chemical-free tool you own is a kettle of plain tap water. Bring it to a rolling boil, carry it out carefully, and pour it straight onto the weeds in the cracks, slowly, so it soaks down to where the plant meets the surface. What happens next is simple biology. Water at 100 degrees Celsius ruptures the plant's cell walls and breaks down the proteins inside. The leaves go limp within hours and crispy brown within a day or two. Here's the part the quick clips leave out, and I want to be honest with you. Boiling water is a contact treatment. It cooks what it touches. On young annual seedlings in spring, that's often enough, because they haven't built much root yet. But on established perennials with deep tap roots, dandelion, bindweed, thistle, the root usually survives and pushes up fresh leaves in a couple of weeks. So treat it as a maintenance tool, not a one and done. Expect to repeat on stubborn weeds every 2 to 3 weeks. Each time you cook the leaves before the plant can rebuild them, the root burns a little more of its stored energy, and eventually it simply gives up. Boiling water also has a quiet advantage over the other natural option you've probably heard about. Salt. Unlike salt or bleach, boiling water won't stain your paving stones, won't corrode concrete, and leaves no residue behind. It just evaporates. One safety note. It's boiling water. Wear closed shoes, pour low and slow, and keep kids and pets back. Cost basically free. Now, before we go further, let me say something plainly about salt, because the internet is full of bad advice here. You'll see clips telling you to dump table salt or rock salt on weeds, sometimes into the boiling water. Yes, salt boosts the kill. It dehydrates the plant. The trouble is, it also poisons the soil, and it doesn't stay put. The next rain carries it sideways, it seeps, it builds up, and it ruins that ground for anything you might want later. Grass, flowers, a shrub. Nearby trees can suffer. Soil life dies off, and you can be waiting years for it to recover. So the rule is simple. No salt in flower beds. No salt near lawns. No salt near trees or shrubs you care about. The only place it has any business at all is deep in a bare pavement crack where nothing should ever grow. And even there it can leach into the soil around it the next time it rains. Honestly, just skip it. Boiling water does the same job without mortgaging the ground for years afterward. And that difference is the whole spirit of the Japanese approach. Solve today's problem without creating tomorrow's. For tougher weeds where boiling water isn't keeping up, there's a stronger natural option: horticultural vinegar. This is not the 5% white vinegar from the kitchen. That'll only nip tiny seedlings on a hot day. Horticultural vinegar is concentrated acetic acid, usually 20 to 30%, and the acid burns through the waxy coating on the leaves. It's better than boiling water at knocking down the leafy top growth of mature weeds. But I want to be straight with you. Even at that strength, it mostly destroys what it touches and only sets back a deep perennial root, so you'll still repeat it. Treat it like the strong chemical it is. At 11% and up, it can burn skin and cause permanent eye damage, and the vapor irritates your lungs. So gloves, eye protection, long sleeves, a still day, and keep it well away from children and pets. And one thing about both vinegar and boiling water: they're what gardeners call non-selective. They can't tell a weed from a flower. Vinegar will scorch your prize hosta as fast as the dandelion beside it. Use them in cracks, on bare ground, on gravel paths. For weeds growing right up against plants you want to keep, hand-pulling is still your best friend. Cost: a jug of household vinegar is a couple of dollars. A bottle of horticultural strength runs more but lasts a long time. Quick note before the prevention half. I put together a guide that collects the low-cost Japanese methods for keeping a whole yard in order: paths, beds, and driveway. It's linked below. Scan the code on screen or tap the link. That's the only time I'll mention it, so if you want it, it's there. Now the part that actually earns the word Japanese. And the part that makes forever honest. Killing weeds is reactive. Stopping them from ever growing is the real win. Walk through almost any traditional Japanese garden, any tidy home with a gravel drive, any temple courtyard, and you'll find the same thing underneath the gravel: a layer of weed control fabric. In Japan, it's called boso sheet, literally weed prevention sheet. It's a tough woven fabric that lets water drain through, but blocks light from reaching the soil. No light, no germination. No germination, no weeds. You'll find the same material at any garden center as landscape fabric or weed barrier. The install is straightforward. Clear the area to bare soil, lay the fabric across the whole surface, overlapping the edges a few inches, pin it with landscape staples, then spread 2 to 3 inches of gravel, stone, or bark on top. The gravel holds the fabric down, shields it from sunlight, and finishes the look. Done properly, a setup like this can hold weeds back for 10 years or more with almost no work. The odd seed that lands in the dust on top pulls out in a second. One tip worth the small extra cost: choose a tough woven fabric rather than the thin plastic sheeting. The cheap stuff tears, clogs, and lets light leak through at the seams within a year or two, which is exactly why people decide fabric doesn't work. It works. Most of the time it was just the wrong fabric, laid without enough overlap. Cost: a roll of good fabric for a path or drive edge is a one-time $30 to $50 and lasts a decade. For flower beds and borders where you do want things growing, the technique shifts. Skip the fabric there. It makes it hard for your real plants to spread and for earthworms to work the soil. Use mulch instead: a thick layer of bark, wood chip, or composted material, 2 to 3 inches deep across the bed. It blocks light from the weed seeds the same way the fabric does, so they can't germinate. As a bonus, it holds moisture, so your tomatoes and roses need less watering in the heat, and it breaks down over time and feeds the soil. Refresh it once a year and that's it. Cost: a bag of mulch for an average bed is $10 to $15 a year. Another piece of the Japanese approach is ground cover. Instead of leaving bare soil between plants, which weeds love to colonize, you fill it with low, dense growers that crowd weeds out: creeping thyme along a path, sedum on a slope, moss in the shady corners that Japanese gardens are famous for. A healthy carpet of moss is basically a living weed barrier that also looks beautiful and asks for almost nothing in return. This is the same instinct behind the famous moss gardens of Kyoto. Instead of fighting a damp, shady spot where grass and weeds both struggle. You give that spot to the plant that actually wants to be there. A weed only grows where there's an opening. Close the opening with something living and there's simply no room for it. Cost low, and it spreads on its own once established. And where weeds do slip through, a few always will, you handle them the kusamushiri way. Wait for the morning after a good rain, when the soil is soft. Grip the weed at the base where it meets the ground and pull slowly and steadily straight up so the root lifts out without snapping. Yank fast or pull on dry, compacted soil, and the top breaks off while the root stays behind to send up a new shoot within a week. Done attentively every few days, the whole job is about 5 minutes. Saved up for one panicked August weekend, it's a battle you lose. That gap right there is the difference between the Japanese way and the way most of us were taught. Let me say something plainly about the commercial weed killer aisle, because this is the quiet villain of the whole story. The business model is built to sell you the cure on repeat, a bottle that knocks the green back for a few weeks so you come back and buy another. Some of those products carry herbicides that studies have linked to health concerns for the people applying them, which is exactly why so many households are looking for another way. The chemical route also tends to kill the soil life that would keep a path balanced on its own, so you stay on the treadmill. A little more product every season to get the same result? Honestly, just skip it. A kettle, a roll of fabric, and a bag of mulch do the same job. And they don't drift onto the vegetable patch. They don't sit on the surface where the dog walks, and they don't need a locked cabinet in the garage. The point was never to find a gentler spray. It was to stop needing one. There's one more piece of timing wisdom, because it makes everything else work better, and most people get it exactly backwards. The best time to treat weeds with boiling water or vinegar is a hot, dry, sunny afternoon. The plant is already stressed by the heat. Its leaf pores are wide open and the water inside is moving fast, so the damage goes deeper. But hand pulling wants the opposite. Soft, wet soil, the morning after rain or after a heavy dew. So the root slides out whole. Treat in the heat, pull in the damp. 2 different jobs, 2 different conditions. A quick word on the weed that seems immortal, because every yard has one. If you've hit a patch of bindweed or Japanese knotweed 3 times and it keeps coming back stronger, that's not the method failing. That's the plant telling you how big its root system is. Knotweed rhizomes can reach about 3 meters deep and run 7 meters sideways. Boiling water alone won't win that one. What does work is exhaustion. Cut or pull every green shoot the moment it appears, before it can photosynthesize and send energy back down. Do it every week through the growing season. A root can't store energy if the leaves never get to make any. By the 2nd summer, it starts to fade. By the 3rd, it's usually gone. You don't need to be stronger than the plant, only more consistent than it is. For knotweed specifically, also check your local rules, since it's a regulated invasive in many areas. Let's talk money. A kettle of boiling water is essentially free. Household vinegar is a couple of dollars and lasts months. A bag of mulch for a bed is $10 to $15 a year. A roll of weed fabric for a path or drive edge is a one-time $30 to $50 and lasts a decade. Set that against commercial weed killer bought again and again, plus replacing any plants the overspray damages. The Japanese approach isn't just safer. It's cheaper by a wide margin. And there's the peace of mind. You can let the dog roll on the lawn the morning after you've cleared the driveway and pick a tomato or a basil leaf by the back door without wondering what was sprayed near it last week. That's worth more than any line on a receipt. Here's a routine you can start this week. In early spring, before the weeds get going, walk the driveway and patio with a kettle and hit every green shoot in every crack. The seedlings you catch now won't be back. While you're out there, look at your gravel paths and bed edges. Anywhere bare soil shows, lay fabric and gravel or top mulch up to a proper 2 to 3 inches. From then on, it's small and steady. Once a week, 5 minutes after rain, pull anything new by the root. Once a month, boil a kettle for the cracks. No spraying, no protective gear, no worrying about drift onto the vegetables. Let me save you the 3 mistakes that send most people back to the spray bottle. The first is pulling on dry soil. You snap the top off, the root stays, and you've actually pruned the weed into growing back thicker. Wait for the damp. The second is treating in the cool of the morning instead of the heat of the afternoon, so the boiling water or vinegar never reaches deep enough to matter. Treat in the heat. The third, and the most common, is laying weed fabric without clearing the existing roots first, or skipping the overlap at the seams, so the weeds simply find the gap, and you blame the fabric. Clear it down to bare soil, overlap generously, pin it tight. Get those 3 right, and the whole system runs almost by itself. And a small reframe that makes the routine stick. Don't think of this as yard work you have to schedule. Think of it the way that temple courtyard treats its gravel. A 30-second glance and a quick pull whenever you happen to be walking past. The weeding stops being an event you dread and becomes something your hands just do, the way you'd straighten a picture on the wall. That's the version that actually lasts, because it never asks much of you on any single day. The deeper lesson here isn't really about weeds or fabric or vinegar. It's a way of thinking. Prevent rather than fight. Maintain rather than rescue. The hardest mess to clean is the one you let build for a year. A weed pulled at 2 centimeters is a 1-second job. The same weed left a month is a 10-minute fight with a root that snaps. Left a season, it's a chemical problem you spend money and worry on. Most of the modern Western approach to the yard was shaped by companies selling you the cure. The Japanese approach was shaped by households practicing the prevention. Once you see the difference, you can't unsee it. Your driveway doesn't have to be a battleground every summer. It just needs a kettle, a roll of fabric, a bag of mulch, and the small, steady attention a Japanese gardener would simply call normal. If this helped, the guide's linked below. Tell me in the comments which weed has been beating you the longest, and subscribe for more of the Japanese method. Next week, we're keeping a small lawn green and healthy through the summer, without chemical fertilizers. See you then.